Right, learning about groovy boards. For those who don't know, because you've never been near a long arm machine before, the reason why I and Laurel feel that groovy boards are a great way forward when people are just starting to use a long arm is that the fear that stops most people going anywhere near them is, what do I do? I've got all that space laid flat out in front of me. It's the same on a domestic machine. You've got all that material faced out in front of you. What happens when you start putting the needle and the thread and the bobbin all together and they start actually making stitches in that fabric? And in particular on a long arm, because we're not used to that big space out in front of us. This is 8 foot long frame that she sits on. So there's all of these things that are giving us the fear. So I've done workshops before, and the different methods I've learned from the methods I've seen taught. That's another way you learn, from the way a teacher teaches. And I've done a class with Debbie Brown that Pinhole Quilting ran once at, I think it was Festival, a few years back now. And that wasn't on groovy boards, but it was the way that she made the learning easier was she had 2 of us at each machine. Back in the day when none of all this social distancing was required, obviously. I'm going to talk about normal times now because hopefully they are coming. So what Debbie did was she gave us 2 people per machine. So that was great because it means you didn't have so much space to worry about, apart from the fact that all our quilts were sample quilts and it didn't really matter. So, but that was another technique used, but a technique, that's one we could try. But the one I'm talking about today is groovy boards. What they are is, I don't know how well you can see from there, but it's a board that has a specific design on it, and there's lots of different types. The particular one I'm showing today is Bishop's Fan. And it has the Bishop's Fan design on there, and there's a groove. And I am standing at the back of Molly, our Moxie machine. And the needle is over there. So what's the amazing clever idea that they've had is you have your groovy board on the back, on this table that we've got, a special quilting on the back table that we've got here, which is used for all sorts, including my notebook, my video stopper thingy, and all sorts of things. It's got my bobbin winder on the other side there as well. But what it's also got on the side of Molly is this stylus. And what you can do is you can line up, I can drop that stylus into one of the grooves, like so. You might not be able to hear it from there, but I can hear that it's clicked right into there. And then, by the way, my needle is up before anybody's worried. My needle is up, so no stitching is actually going to happen in this little demo. But the stylus is down there, you see a little bit there, and it's in one of those grooves. And so now when I move Molly, you stay in the groove, oops, or not, and that's one thing I'm going to talk about in a minute, and you follow the pattern. And then that pattern will stitch out at the front. Okay, that's the concept of the groovy boards. There are more things, obviously you need to learn about how to align. You know, you do 1 row of Bishop's Fan, and then of course you have to go down the next line to do another row of Bishop's Fan. It's an edge to edge design. So there's other things to learn as well, but that's the basic concept of the groovy board. What it actually is, you're quilting from the back on the board that has got a design on it. That design is marked out with grooves, and to stitch, the stylus goes into those grooves, and the needle will have the thread and everything in it, and it will stitch out the design for you. Okay, that's the concept. Now, moving on then to some of the things that I've been learning, some of the mistakes I have made whilst I've been trialling this, considering my method of learning. Again, I'll reiterate, my method of learning is almost doing before I learn. Like I learn the basic concept of something and then I have to have a go. And then I realise the mistakes I make. So that's what guides my future learning. That's how I learn. Some people like to read the whole manual word for word before they go anywhere near a machine. That's not how I operate. I get the basic knowledge, probably make more mistakes than I could have done if I'd read the manual maybe. That's fine by me. If I accept that, that works. That sinks it in. That helps me feel at ease and comfortable with what I'm doing, which is what this is all about. So if you're a manual reader, read the manual. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying my way of learning is a bit of knowledge, tons of doing, tons of mistakes, and then further learning in the manuals, the books, the videos, etc. Workshops, obviously. Face-to-face workshops, yes. I'm hoping to get to one, a pinhole quilting in June. Oh, fingers crossed. Right, so one mistake that anybody who knows anything will see, that for a start, one of the things, a mistake I've made, is I've actually put the groovy board, this particular one, on to the table upside down. So that's one of the first issues. This, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it in the video. There's a groove that goes all the way along the bottom of the fans like that. That line is apparently meant to be up against this metal bar here. And the reason why that continuous line, continuous groove all the way along there is important is because it's a alignment line. It helps you then when you go into your next line of doing bishop's fan. It's something to help before you start stitching. It helps you align each row so they're falling in neatly together. Because at the moment, let me try and move it so I can hopefully get you a slightly better look. If I move this tray to under here, hopefully without crashing and banging. I'm hoping you can see a little bit of the design, but I've rolled a lot of it on. And some of the mistakes you might be able to see is very bumpy lines along some of here. Now, what I've learned from that is that my table, the loft frame that Molly sits on, is sitting on a carpet. And I suspect the floor is not exactly straight. She can sit, it's straight enough for Molly to sit correctly in the frame. You pull that stylus up. She's sitting, she's not moving. So it's not a massive difference, but I think that affects the way these groovy boards actually sit on the table. So that's something, when I turn it around the right way, that's something I'll try to adjust as well, so that stylus is in the groove far enough to allow it to move, but it's loose enough, it's up enough that I can actually move it through the grooves, through the channels is another word to use for them. So that's one thing I have learnt from my mistakes, such as really bumpy stitching. And as before, it slightly came out of the groove, so it wouldn't have been straight. But that's partly my mistake because I'm not handling it correctly. I'm not concentrating properly because I'm filming. And it's also just another thing that I can adjust on the table to make that work better. Because it's all part of muscle memory, really, and also just experience, just you doing it more often. So when you come for a trial, when you come for a session with us to use her and have a practice and doing the different techniques, these are things that I will now be able to teach you and make you aware of. So really, I'm just teaching is a bit like making you aware of all the mistakes I've made. It's like, oh, look, I made this mistake. Oh, look, I made this mistake. So you've got to be quite humble to be a teacher, not have a massive ego. Yes, so that's one thing I've learned. Another thing I've learned is that when the stylus is in there, is that in there now? Yeah. Standing position is also important. Having your arms bent like this and freeing your body up. Let me turn it around a bit more. It's meant to be enjoyable. I know, who knew? But you're not meant to be, oh my God, this is terrifying. I've got this massive machine and oh my God, it's terrifying. The world isn't going to end if a couple of stitches don't go right or you go in the wrong direction. This is why we use practice quilts to help. You have to go through those mistakes to learn. It's almost impossible to just go onto this machine, press the button and never make another mistake ever. That ain't going to happen. If you go into something knowing that you're going to be making some mistakes or inexperienced activities, then you will learn to enjoy it more. So when you can stand at her, relax your hands, don't need that pen, relax those hands, press the buttons that you need and take her through. I need to bring her a bit closer, otherwise if I bring her closer over here I won't be so far away because she's not stitching, because like I say, the needle is up. So there, masking tape those down and then you just relax. It's not meant to be, and it's very hard for me to do this actually while I'm trying to film, so I might just stop. But as long as you get the concept of what using a groovy board is, and just my constant message that be grateful for the mistakes because they help you learn. Yeah, so those are some of the mistakes and learning experiences I've had. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this and go and do some more, turn this around and then get Molly set up for actually doing some stitching, and I'll film me doing that for you as well. Here we go, just a brief little video to give you a proper look actually of the mistakes I was saying I'd made on my first tries as such on the groovy board. I filled some of the spaces up with practice quilting, but I think it's important that you see mistakes I make, because we so often get presented with just the final superb effort and we don't see the learning steps taken in between. In other words, the mistakes made in between. And this is showing you properly what the groovy boards look like on the table, so you can actually see what I mean by the grooves / the channels, because it was a bit difficult to see when I was doing the talking before. And then here we're coming up to Molly herself, and here is the stylus I was talking about, and the little nib is down in the groove, and then that travels along. Can I move it without? No, I can't do that really well. I'm trying to hold the camera as well. Okay, little bit of a catch up. I've had my first go, well, my first proper go as such today, after having changed around the groovy board and taken quite a bit of time in placing it in the right place on the table so that it lined up with the edge of my quilt top per se. I like the fact that it will be actually, that's what it'll look like from the right hand side there. That's what it will look like. I like the fact that it goes over the edge. That suits me much better. Obviously, if you wanted the edge of your bishop's fan to have the curves, going there and a complete fan was visible, that would be fine. But for me, I like having it as if it's coming out of nowhere. And as you look through this, you will see some little bit of obbly bobbly bits there, definitely there. But then much better, pretty, that's it, bob on. Brilliant. And that's because I found a method of pressing down on the groovy board, which I will show you in a minute because it's too difficult to film from here. And another thing that I want you to take note of is this presser foot that I have used. See if I can get it. It's easier for you to see because Molly's light is on and it's a bit tricky. That is not the right presser foot to be using when you use the groovy boards, because what can happen is when you go off the top and onto the wadding and then try to come back, it can pull the top up. The glide foot is a much better foot for using when you're doing groovy boards, but that's currently at Laurel's house, so I didn't have that as an option. But now I'm going on to just try to finish off the very bottom of this here. Some of it's the end of the quilt, but that's fine. I just want to see about alignment, really. Okay, it's coming on, feeling good. Feeling good. Right, now this next bit might be a little bit wobbly because I'm going to have to hold it in my hand to be able to show you a little bit more of what I mean about trying to align my next row of Bishop's fan design that'll fill this space here at the very end. It'll go off the end of this quilt top, but that's fine. But I want it to stitch now so it goes in alignment and flow with that current line of stitching. I have not moved this groovy board at all. That stayed where it is. What has had to move is the fabric. I've rolled it round so that the stitch will happen in the right place. And as you can see, I've done it and it's ready to start. See, there it is at the beginning. And now what I'll show you now is how I've gone with the stylus along this alignment line to check that the needle will be going in the right place there. Needle is up, so no stitching will happen. Now let's see how I manage this without the stand. Okay, so I'm now going to move it along. The stylus is in there. And you'll see at the same time as I'm going along the groove, the needle is going, well, the needle housing is going along, and see it's coming, goes in the point there, that's right. There we go, see? So that's how it will stitch out. I'll know that the spacing between it all will be correct. And that's just a test line. The alignment line does not get stitched anyway. It just helps with this alignment matter. Okay, I'm afraid that's the best I could think of with the filming capacity I have. Here we go. I've done a bit of my second row of, here I am, but I will have to appear out of shot because this is just a bit weird. I've started the second row of the Bishop's fan design, and I'm really happy with the placement that I've got on it. I'll show you later, but I'm really happy with the spacing, and I just thought you might just like to see a little bit of a shots of me actually stitching it out. I've turned Molly's light down to almost nothing. In fact, I think I did switch it off altogether. So otherwise, she does have a very strong light that comes down, and it just makes it hard to record on video. And yeah, so I'll just do a little short section for you to show you how it actually stitches out. I'm still stood at the back, going with the stylus through the grooves. Okay, It's just a different angle of filming, really. Okay, here we go.